Okay, so I'm the only one watching, so we're okay there, and we're on 59. Lovely.
Regularly.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Hello, everyone. As you're joining, I'm just letting more people in. More people coming in.
Right, George, I'll just say, I'm going to say.
Hello, everyone. I'm just letting the last few stragglers in. Don't tell them I called them stragglers. There we go. We may as well kick off. It's 12:02. So I'm just going to very briefly say welcome. I'm Jill Wilson from Cambridge Biomedical Campus Limited, and I have great pleasure today in introducing Kelly and David. I'm not going to say anything about them because they're going to introduce themselves. I just want to thank them for turning up today and running this webinar for us, because I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. So guys, over to you.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you. And nice to see everybody here for this lunchtime session. So today we're going to be talking about how to talk so your team will listen, and listen so your team will talk. David and I have been really looking forward to doing this session with you today. We hope to offer a little experience for you to take away and maybe use with your team after the session. Part of the session will offer you some space to think and sort of reflect on some teams that you've worked with already. And then we'll also have some time for breakout session as well, where you can talk to some other people on the call later in the hour. And then we'll finish the hour with some open conversation at the end. So hopefully it'll feel nice and interactive, but at the same time, you'll have enough time to have lunch as well. So as you might tell, we're going to be recording this session. It's just so that others can watch it later. So you're very welcome to stay on camera if you're on camera, or keep your camera off. It's entirely up to you. Unmic yourself, unmute yourself if you want to chat to us. But likewise, there's that chat function as well if you want to comment, and that obviously won't be visible to people that are watching the recording. So use the space however that works for you. With the only thing that we do ask is when you go into the breakout groups, if you could turn your camera on for those conversations, just so that that's a bit more intimate in that space with each other. And obviously we're not recording that particular space. So make yourself comfortable however it works for you for the session. So firstly, just a little introduction to us so you know why we're here talking about this subject. David, do you just want to introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. Lovely to see you all, and thanks Jill for inviting us to do this and giving us the opportunity. Some of you might have seen me before. I have done a few of these sessions a few years ago during the pandemic, but I'm a life coach and I love to work with individuals for them to really tap into their authenticity and their potential so that they can really live the lives that they want to live and be the leaders that they want to be in their lives.
Fabulous, Dave. Thank you. And I'm Kelly. I work with teams at all different levels of organisations to help them function better together. So I do quite a lot of team coaching. I work with different teams. I've worked with a variety of different well-known brand names kind of all over the UK, including probably many of the organisations today, so pharmaceutical, biotech, research, blue light services, all a range of different organisations. And I really love quirky teams and helping them find a way that they can be really good together. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I just think once you've got that, the team's pretty invincible, and I love working in that space with teams. So one learning that I often find with teams when I'm working with them is that you often find that there's people in a team that are very open and free to kind of share their thoughts and their feelings together, and other people that will hold back much more and only share their views when asked. Whole teams can be like this, and even whole organisations, if you think about it. You can have a really chatty sales team or a whole media organisation could be very happy to share exactly how they're feeling about things. And at the same time, you might have a team or an organisation, perhaps a slightly more cautious legal team or a life sciences organisation, even where the what is shared is much more sort of thought through before people actually speak. So you see this kind of range of different people and teams in organisations. I'm sure we've all experienced the full spectrum in work or in our community or sports teams or just in our personal lives as well. So there's a whole host of different experiences that each of us bring to this session. So a few key things that I see with teams that are really good at this kind of communication. People tend to have full attention on each other, maintaining eye contact and sort of linking together, acknowledging each other's emotions, perhaps picking up on each other's body language. Much harder in this space, but surprisingly, we can still really connect, even when we're virtual together. People listen without interrupting each other and build on each other's points. Offer constructive feedback, and they build solutions together. So that kind of team when you feel that you're in that really good space. So just to start off with, just in terms of thinking through your experiences, just wanted to invite you just for a minute just to think about really, really great team that you've worked with, where you've really felt that you've been able to be open or really get into listening to what's going on in the team. But we've all got different preferences for how we turn up, but a team that's really worked well for you. I'll just give you a moment just to think about that and what makes you feel comfortable in that space and what's happening in that team. If it helps you, just write down some notes on that. We'll come back to it later in the session. But just to give you that thinking space just for a few seconds now. if you've got a team in mind or you want to build on these thoughts, I just want to ask you just as well, just to think of a time or a different team perhaps when you really struggled to either voice your thoughts or to really listen into what was happening, and what kind of made you feel a bit uncomfortable in that space as well, just to sort of build on those thoughts that you've already started on. Till just give you another sort of 20-30 seconds to think about that as well.
So just to be clear, Kelly's asking two questions. One is, can you think of a team that you've worked in or teams that you've worked in where you have felt comfortable? And then the second question is, are there teams in which you felt less comfortable? And so just to be clear about that.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
Someone's written in the chat about that.
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra. Well, we're thinking about that. David, did you have possibly have an example of a team that you've worked with?
Yeah, so I've not really worked in too many teams, but in one team in particular where it did work, we were all very willing to share, but when it actually came to taking action on the things that we talked about and got all excited about in the team meeting, nothing ever got done. So there was this kind of frustrating thing where we would meet up the next month or whenever it was, and we'd be exactly where we were the month before. And as the leader of that team, feeling quite perplexed about how we were going to overcome that problem.
Yeah. I was just going to share an example as well of something that I'm conscious of personally. I'm quite an introvert, and so I know when I turn up in a team meeting, that if I'm the last person to arrive, I feel a bit on the back foot for some reason, and so I've learned to always try and be early. It just makes me a bit more comfortable. Can't explain it, it just is. But we'll explore this a bit more in the session today, whatever experiences that you have there. So there's just a couple of examples of just sort of reflecting on where we're at the moment. Before we came to this session, we just posed a question out to everybody in terms of, do you find it easier to talk, or do you find it easier naturally to listen? And we've all got different personality types around this. Some of us may be more inclined to talk out loud, to think things through together, and some of us do like to think and then come up with more of a conclusion about what our opinion is, and that sort of affects where we're at in the group. David's got a really lovely exercise for us to be able to explore this and our natural preferences and trying to get into the best space that we can. So I'm just going to pass over to David now just to take us through this lovely exploration. David?
Great, thank you, Kelly. So my experience of working with individuals, and of course individuals, some of them don't work in teams, some of them do. But what I really notice in people that I work with as a coach and people that I interact with in life, and also for myself, that I find there's this real inclination to look to other people to make me feel comfortable, for me to feel calm and relaxed, for me to feel like things are really working well for me. And so what that means is, I notice is that I go into meetings or I meet up with people and I have this expectation that this person should behave in a certain way, this person should be a certain way for me to enjoy their company or to be able to work with them and collaborate with them. And I don't know about your experience, but my experience of that is that just doesn't work. It might work on the odd occasion, but in a sustainable way, and certainly from a place where I can go into any situation and feel calm and relaxed, that way of thinking just doesn't work. It's just not something that's going to work. So the thing that does work for me, and this is what I want to share with everybody today, is this is to go through this exercise that poses the question, how do I show up authentically? How do I show up powerfully and with confidence in myself, regardless of who I'm in the room with? And what I've noticed is that when I can do that, I can speak with confidence and I can share what is on my mind, even if that might be uncomfortable or that it might be challenging for me or for the other person. And that it allows me to really listen to what it is that other people are saying. So rather than have someone speak to me and me be in this kind of judgmental place of, oh, well, I don't agree with them and da-na-na-na, which tends to sort of promote antagonism and often isn't very helpful. For me to actually sit quietly and listen to what it is that they're saying and incorporate that into the discussion so that it becomes this two-way thing. So the model that I'm going to be working with is referred to by the woman that created it. Her name is Patsy Rodenberg, and she calls it the 3 circles of energy. And Patsy Rodenberg is a voice coach. So she works with people who do all kinds of public speaking. So actors, motivational speakers, politicians, CEOs, people that maybe talk to very large audiences or maybe talk to to large or small teams. But it's finding this way of how do I show up in my authenticity and not feel like I have to limit myself or shut myself down when I'm with that team. So these 3 circles of energy, you will all be familiar with them to some degree. Some you'll be familiar with, some you'll feel unfamiliar with, some will feel like you're longing for them, and others you'll feel like they're really, like you really don't feel comfortable. And my invitation is for you to play along with me. I'm going to take you through it. And if you participate in it, then I think you'll probably learn a lot more from it than if you just sit along and not participate. But please feel free to do what feels right for you. This is an invitation. This isn't a strict order from my end. So I hope everyone's kind of clear about that and happy with that. So if you feel uncomfortable, then please just do stop. If you don't want to take part, then please don't. But I think you'll get a lot more from it if you do. And the other thing is please don't take my word for any of this. The invitation again is for you to experience and learn from your experience, because life experience is the great teacher. So let's do the first exercise. So I'm going to do this standing. I have got a chair behind me, so people can do this sitting as well. And I'm going to kind of be bopping up and down. Feel free to stay seated if you feel comfortable to stay seated, or to stand up if you'd like to stand up, because we're going to be moving the body a little bit. We're going to be playing around with posture and how you hold yourself, and for us to notice the impact that that's having on us. Okay, so I'm going to stand, hopefully just get the angle up a little bit. Okay, so the first one is the first circle of energy. The first circle of energy, which is, if you're playing along with me, kind of the circle of introspection. So you might be deeply focused on a task, you might be in quiet contemplation, but generally speaking, the feeling is one of being inward, and probably kind of your body's not taking up very much space. So if you were standing, your feet might be close together, or your legs might be crossed. You know, people tend to sort of cross their legs over, particularly when they're seated as well. Maybe their hands are in front of them, and there's this sense of looking down. So rather than looking straight ahead, there's this kind of downward look with the head. There's this downward direction with the eyes, the hands crossed over, or maybe crossed over like this. And the shoulders are sort of slightly hunched, and there's this feeling of going inward, which is great when you're thinking deeply. But you'll also notice that as you do that, your shoulders start to stoop. And you might notice that your breathing begins to change, where the breathing becomes quite shallow and the breathing becomes quite soft or quite weak, which is completely appropriate for the situation that you're in when you're introspective. But you'll also notice that when you are like that, you might notice that your awareness of the space around you has disappeared. So you're going inward. And if you play along with me, standing or seated, you might start to notice that you can probably hear what I'm saying, but actually there's much more attention inward. And because you're not aware of what's going on around you, it does open you to being much quieter, not necessarily being aware of what's being said, so you're not following the conversation. You're much less willing and open to interact with people. And that in certain situations, that's completely appropriate, but perhaps in a team meeting or a team environment, this kind of introspection means that you're not interacting with other people, that maybe you're kind of like an energy drain in the room because you're not interacting, so it feels quite hard for other people. And the purpose of doing this exercise is to simply draw your attention and your awareness to this feeling and to maybe be aware of the impact that it's having on other people. And then to ask yourself, does this feel familiar? So if you're someone that does this a lot, this will feel familiar. If you're someone that's like the life and soul of the party, this will probably feel really unfamiliar. But also it might feel really uncomfortable to be in this place, or this might be something that you isn't familiar, but you really would love to be able to do more of this. And either, whichever one of those that is, just being aware of that. And then as we draw this first exploration to a close, notice how you're responding as we start to come out of it. So as you begin to bring your body up and you look up and maybe shaking your body off, maybe there's like, oh, thank goodness for that. I'm so glad that's over. That was really awful. Yeah, I really didn't enjoy that. Or maybe there's a sense of, oh, I really enjoyed that and I don't want to come out of that. And I'm resisting kind of coming out of that slower contemplative state. But, and again, there's no right or wrong here. It's just, again, inviting you to be aware of that. So that's the first circle, circle 1. We're now going to jump to circle 3. So circle 3 is you're taking up much more space. So maybe your hands are on your hips, or if you're sat down on a chair, you know, like maybe you're back like this with your hands up over your head and your elbows are out. So you're really taking up space here. And that when you're doing that, your chest is open, the front of your body feels really open. And when you're looking, you're not even looking at people, you're looking over people. So to give you a feel for that in the room that you're in, if you look around the room, don't look at pictures or plants or desks or monitors, look over them. If you're looking outside, look over the trees. And there's this feeling of looking over, sort of being aware of them, but it's not an intimate awareness. It's kind of a broad, open awareness, okay, that isn't intimate. And because you're open and because you're taking up space, you might notice that your breathing feels different, like your breathing may be deep from the belly, but maybe your breathing is quite loud and quite like it has a bit of a growl in it, like there's this strong as you're breathing, and that if you were speaking, that you would speak really loud. So if you were in a meeting, that you might speak over people, yeah, and not necessarily be that open to what people are saying or being aware of what's going on in the room, but you might just be very dominant, which perhaps is a great thing when you're in a concert or something like that, and you're trying to find your way out of to the exit, or if you're at the bar in the pub. Being in third circle is great for getting the attention of the person behind the bar, particularly in a noisy pub. So you're taking up space, and there's this sense of being seen, which can feel uncomfortable for people. But there is this sense of dominance. There's this sense of being overbearing. There's this sense of talking over and controlling or dominating the space or dominating people. Yeah. So as you're sat there or stood there, just getting a sense of what that feels like. And again, if you're the life and soul of the party, this might feel really comfortable to you and really familiar to you. But if you're more of an introverted type person, this might feel unfamiliar. And again, that's all okay. And maybe it feels longed for, like maybe you want to be seen, maybe you want to be heard. This was definitely where I was at when I discovered this. I was quite a quiet and timid person, and there was a part of me that really wanted to be able to speak in public and to take up space and be seen and be taken seriously. So there was all of that there. So as we draw this second exercise to a close, and we start to shake it off a little bit, again, notice, are you really glad that you stopped that? Or is there this sense of, oh God, I really loved that, I really enjoyed that, I want to do more of that, yeah? Or is, and just to notice that, so that you have this awareness of your relationship with this third circle of energy. And then the final part of the exercise, or the final circle, is circle 2, which Patsy Rodenberg refers to as the circle of presence. And to do this, again, stand. If you're standing, then have your feet about shoulder width apart, your arms relaxed down by your side. If you're seated, then maybe sitting with your feet, again, shoulder width apart, maybe not leaning back or slouching on your chair, but sitting upright, maybe on the edge of your chair, so that you feel alert and aware of what's going on. I'll come back up to standing. And your eye line, your eye vision is on objects or on people. So if you're looking at the plant, I've got a little lemon tree behind my screen here. So I'm looking at the lemon tree, or I'm looking at the lilies in the corner, or the picture on the wall. And take a moment to look around your space, if you will, and really look at the objects in your room. And you might notice that you interact with them differently to the way you might normally interact with them. Notice how your breathing might be different. My breathing is much slower, much deeper. My body feels open, but not really open. So that there's this sense of reaching out, but also receiving. So there's this sort of circular quality to this. And then what also shows up here is a sense of intimacy and interacting with people or with objects. It works just the same, or with pets if you're working at home today, if you've got your pets. But this sense of being more intimate and connected, so that it is easier to communicate outwards, but it's also easier to communicate and listen when people or when other people are talking to you. And as you're sat or stood here, taking a moment to think, does this feel familiar? Does this feel unfamiliar? And as we contemplate coming out of this, is there a sense of, I would really love to be able to stay here? Or is this something of, oh, I've had enough, I want to get out, I want the exercise to finish as quickly as possible? So if you shake that off, and then the final exercise before I hand back to Kelly is an exercise where we move between the three. So what I would do in a room is I would invite people to stand up and move around the room. And it's a really interesting exercise in how you interact and relate to people. But for today, I would invite you to do this in your own space. You can walk around if you would like, but it's how do you interact with the objects in your room? And if there are people in your room, then that's great. But if we start in first circle, so you're much more internalized, and that you might look at things, but there's this sense of feeling somewhat disconnected from them as you look around. You could do this seated or you could do it standing. And then from here, you could move into second circle. So you look up a little bit and you might notice the chest comes up a little bit. But again, you're looking at, and there's this interaction and intimacy with the objects in your room. And then from here, move to third circle where you're looking over things. So again, you're losing some of that intimacy, maybe. But notice how you are changing from first circle to second circle to third circle. So move back to second circle. So you're looking, paying attention to how the body feels as you're interacting with objects in the room in second circle. And then moving back to first circle when you feel more internalized. And then back to third circle, maybe put your hands on your hips, take up more space, but looking over objects. And then to finish up back in second circle, hands down by your sides, the body relaxed. You're looking at the objects in the room. And for anybody who would like to and is willing, if anyone would like to turn on their camera, and if we come back to our screens and for us to take a moment in second circle, only if you want to, but to take a moment in second circle to look at each other on the screen. I appreciate someone has to be the brave first person to do that. Thank you, Alexandra. But for those of you that are willing to do it, please take a moment to look at each other on the screen in second circle. These wonderful people that have come to this meeting and have been brave enough to show themselves. I'm not making a judgment to anyone who hasn't, so please don't feel bad. Just noticing what difference it makes. Yeah, we're seeing smiles, we're seeing softness, we're seeing engaged eyes. And seeing something in each of these people that you're looking at that you can appreciate. You've got someone with an amazing gold circular background that looks, that could be all kinds of things. I'm not even going to go there. Very exciting. But yes, just enjoying the interaction and the openness between people. Thank you. So if you would prefer to turn your cameras off, then please do so. Don't feel like you have to stay on there. But I'm going to hand back to Kelly now, and she's going to take you on to the next part of the exploration. Thank you.
Hello, sorry, I just, in that moment of presence, got disconnected just then. So sorry, I just missed the end there, David. So apologies for the silence, but hopefully with everybody being in that circle too, it was a useful use of those few seconds. David, that was lovely. Every time you do that and I engage in that exercise as you're going through it, I just find new things. Just wanted to say today I was just in circle 3 wanting just to push everything off my desk. That's what I was noticing. So thank you everybody for doing that exercise with David just then. Just wanted to take us back to those teams that we were thinking about at the start of the session. Just wanted to invite you just to reflect on what circle you felt that you were in when you were in that memory of that team. So were you in circle 1 or 2 or 3 when you were thinking about the team that you were really comfortable in, and also the time or the team where you felt uncomfortable? And as a real stretch exercise, just thinking about anybody else in that team and what circle they might have been in at the time, if you found that first question easy to reflect on. Sometimes it's just nice to have these moments just to pause and think in our days, isn't it? Okay. What we're going to do next is invite you to join a breakout group of about 3 or 4 people, and just to share together the experience that you've had, or any thoughts that you've had, any feelings that you've had over the session so far, and just discuss what you've learned today about that team or teams that you've worked with before. Again, as a little stretch task, if you can get yourself into that circle 2 zone when you're in that conversation, just see how that affects your engagement in that conversation as well. So we're going to suggest about 10 minutes, or maybe 8 minutes actually. So if we come back together at 1:45, and then we'll have some open conversation just to share what each group's been talking about together. So I'll just invite you into those breakout groups. They're very random as to where everybody's been allocated. So I'll just open those now, and we'll see you back here at 1:45. Brilliant. Brilliant. Everybody's moved into a group. That's great.
Very good.
Well done, David.
Nice one.
It's such a lovely exercise.
Yeah, that is a really interesting. Should I get rid of that? That was a really interesting exercise, because it's all things that I've done but didn't know I was doing it, because I can sit there, especially in a team where you don't feel part of it, you know, where you just sit there as this small, insignificant, almost like a depressive would sit, as opposed to the going in and, hey, this is me. And I've done that. And then most of the time I'm in the middle in circle 2, which I guess is the good place to be, because you don't want to be too cocky, but then you don't want to be too withdrawn either, do you? But it's really good to draw it to people's attention, because I was sort of semi-aware of it, but I would imagine that a lot of people aren't aware at all. Is that what you find?
Yeah, totally. And that people fall into their patterns and habits, when they're feeling stressed and anxious. So that was something that maybe we'll end up talking about after the breakout rooms. Yeah, that when people are feeling anxious or overwhelmed or depressed or doubtful or fearful, they'll go into probably 1 or 3. And that's their kind of polarized position. And so they'll show up in their meetings that way. And usually that's not it's okay, but it's not always that helpful.
It's like a defense mechanism then, going in really cocky and meeting people as they are, but underneath actually you're dying.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. So people tend to learn, as you'll be aware, because you're a psychologist, right? But there's that patterning of, I go to one extreme or the other, and sometimes people flip, of course, but we tend to have a dominant pattern. And it's just drawing awareness to that, and then being able, which is the purpose of that last bit, is to actually consciously move from 3 into 2, or from 1 into 2, so that you can be more present, even though you're feeling fearful. Yeah. So it's not making fearful wrong or doubtful wrong. It's just, okay, this is where I'm at, so this is how I'm going to choose to show up differently.
So talking so your team will listen, then you're in number 2, so that you're approachable, you're looking at them, you're relaxed.
Yeah.
And if you adopt number 2, then hopefully other people will also adopt number 2, and without knowing it, the dynamic will change. Is that what you're saying?
There you go. That's exactly the thing that we wanted people to get.
Well
done.
Well, we'll see if other people have done it. No, it says, I don't know if there are messages from Britain. No, there aren't. Oh, unassigned 2 people.
Unassigned, which is
that's just you two.
Now Jade is in a room on her own.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, so maybe if we move her to 1.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah.
I'll move her to room 2.
I've moved her to room 1.
Oh, have you? Okay.
So room 1's only had 2 people in it.
But she's not joined.
No, she might have disappeared.
She has now.
Oh,
I set the rooms so that there were 4 to 5 people in them, but it's
We've got 2 in room 5.
maybe people have left.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, 20 participants. Yeah.
20. So so some people don't like doing this sort of thing. But it's good for those who do.
Totally.
But
yeah, and it was really nice when people when people actually came on screen, right? Because that's the big ask for something like this, isn't it? And we had 10 people, which was lovely.
Yeah.
And other people were feeling comfortable not to have to join as well, which is really good as well, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It does make you wonder how much more we are generally in circle 1 when we're working at home. In the pandemic, like loads of introverts suddenly seem to find ourselves in comfortable space at home. And actually, I was sort of thinking when we were doing the exercise, it's quite easy for post-it notes and books and various things to kind of start encroaching on your space and force you into circle 1 a little bit at home. Mental note to go and tidy the desk. But a lot of people struggled in lockdown or working remotely, possibly because we're not in circle 3 enough at times. It's quite, in terms of preparing for a Zoom call like this, you almost want to be in 3 to move.
Yeah, well, you need to, don't you, to be able to get that dynamism across, because it's no good us sitting there going, oh yes, because they'll just all tune out. So you've got to be a performer at some level, haven't you, when you're presenting?
Yeah, and my argument would be that actually to present, you don't need to be in circle 3. You're more effective in circle 2. Actually. Yeah. But most people's default, my default is definitely to go to circle 3. Yes. Robin Williams, in Mrs. Doubtfire or Good Morning Vietnam, and he's just like larger than life, and that's great if you don't have to interact with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if you have to interact with it, it can be overwhelming. Yeah. I'd imagine Robin Williams is quite hard to interact with, or he was when he was alive.
Yeah. Yes, but so I think are a lot of someone else coming in. Gosh, that's late.
Maybe the name doesn't ring a bell.
No, it doesn't ring a bell. 3 unassigned participants. So has she automatically gone in then to? Yeah.
Yeah, she has. Yeah.
Do you want to assign her?
Well, we're almost.
I see.
Breakout room is going to be finished.
Yeah.
Hi, Shelley. We're in breakout rooms at the moment, so.
Hi, I'm so sorry.
It's no problem.
I got stuck in the traffic, and that's why I'm late.
That's no problem. There will be a recording up fairly soon on the of this on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus YouTube channel, so you'll be able to catch up on all of it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you
So
so much.
we've got another 15 minutes now, but you know, the whole of it will be up.
Wow, thank you so much.
Not at all. It's lovely to see you. So everybody's coming back into the room in 13 seconds.
Yeah.
And some of them will start coming back in shortly.
Very good.
Here we go. They're back.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. It's nice to see some faces on the screen and people choosing to be on or off the main camera. That's really lovely to know that you've all been talking in your smaller groups together. We are really curious about what you've been talking about. There's a couple of ways that you can engage with us here, just in terms of using that chat function if you'd prefer to use that route, or quick hand up and share with the group generally. So any brave soul like to go first and just share some of the conversation that you've had in your group, so that we all get to experience what each other's been talking through. Alexandra.
Yeah, I can try just to break the ice for the others to come. So it's a very simple thought probably we had. It's just that when it was working, you know, when we were, you know, we had good interaction with other team members, it was when we were most of us in circle 2. So we were all together in the same circle. Whereas when it wasn't working, there was, you know, it depends from the situation, but there was someone in 1 and others in 3, or someone in 2 or 3. So the problem now, the question now is how you can get out of the one zone, those in zone 1, so that they can then start interacting. And, you know, there was some suggestions like, you know, giving them space. But as I said, I've been in the situation where I thought I was in 2 or 3 and another person was in 1. I tried to give them space, but it's not enough sometimes. So it's really finding the way to motivate someone to get out of their zone 1 so that they can then share with others. So, and then I think that was it in 8 minutes, really. I don't know, it's probably very, you know, straightforward what I've said, but this is what we kind of, I think it was just to summarize and try to put in reality what we've been doing with David, basically.
Fabulous. So David, did you have any quick thoughts about a kind of quick life hack, as it were, if you find yourself in circle 1 or 3, and there's no judgment on that, sometimes it's useful to be in 1 or 3 as well, but if you're trying to get into circle 2, is there a quick way to help somebody else achieve that?
Somebody else to achieve that? Yeah, exactly. Well, there's certainly the thing of, if somebody just wants to be in circle 1 or they want to be in circle 3 and they're just digging their heels in, then they're, you know, it does require a willingness from the other person. But my experience is that if I remain in circle 2, then that is almost like a role modeled invitation for somebody to be in circle 2 as well. So there's something about co-regulation. So if someone their nervous system is agitated, but my nervous system is calm, then there's something about how that calmness can actually help somebody themselves to become calm. So really practicing that, being in second circle, for me, has been a really powerful way to allow other people to move from either circle 3 or circle 1 and move into circle 2. And the other thing I would say is that circle 2 is the circle, like you were saying, Alexandra, where you allow people to be as they are. Like, it's okay to be in circle 1 and it's okay to be in circle 3, but do you get pulled out of circle 2 when you're in the company of people in circle 1 or circle 3? That's the question, because then you become reactive. Whereas my invitation is for you to stay in circle 2 and be responsive and allow them to be there. And in that allowing, often people will move into circle 2 anyway. Don't know if you want to add anything to that, Kelly.
No, that's a brilliant hack in a way, just to stay in circle 2, giving that permission. So I like that. Thank you, David. Catherine mentioned on the chat that lots of online meetings where people are present or not, in terms of trying to multitask, don't we all? And how that almost robs you of that being in that middle space, in that second circle. So thanks for that, Catherine. Jidka, so I got a hand up.
Yeah, I have a question about what to do with those people that are mostly in the circle, that are overbearing, talking over others. What to do to help them to come to the second circle, because that's their nature, maybe. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, so again, kind of, I could just repeat what I'd already said, that there's this sense of, if I stay in circle 2, then there's that invitation for the person in circle 3 to move out of it. And then I also think that there's something about, like, when people are stressed, or they're anxious, or they're fearful, or they're worried about things, people will normally go to their habitual behavior or their pattern of behavior, because they've learned that for them, that's the way to deal with how they're feeling. And so people will usually go to either 3 or they'll go to 1. That's just their habit. And so being aware, like all of you that participated in the exercise, you now have an awareness through experience. You now have an awareness of what it feels like to be in circle 3 or circle 1. And you know which one of those feels more familiar. And by having an awareness that you're in circle 3 or in circle 1, you can move yourself into circle 2, which is this circle of presence, this circle of allowing people to be as they are, who they are. So I would say, to help someone whose habit is to go into circle 3, you stay in circle 2. And also you can draw your attention, or draw their attention to it, and do that kindly, but draw their attention to it, and perhaps give them ways in which they can move into circle 2, so that they can overcome that habit and overcome that impact that they're having on other people. Again, Kelly, please, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I was just going to add something about when you're in, for example, in a team or a larger group. Something that's sometimes nice to do is to give everybody that minute just to pause and just reflect on the previous 15 minutes and how they've showed up in that session, how they're physically feeling, and just give people that minute to think. And it's amazing then when people come back at the end of that minute, what reflections sometimes people have had. It just gives that kind of break where people are rolling along with a particular energy. It just gives that break just to think, am I really in the right place that I need to be responding to what's happening in the room? So introducing that almost regularly in, for example, a team meeting just helps people to expect that space together as well. It's quite an easy way into, helping people reflect on their impact. So I use that quite a lot in coaching teams, just pause and reflect, and sometimes all sorts of things come up. Personal reflections, actually, are we heading in the right direction here? It's a really healthy minute. So you could try that as well.
And also, I think if we actually educate our teams at whatever level we are in the exercise that David actually took us through, because it's one thing to set the example, it's one thing to be in circle 2, and if the people on your team are perceptive, they can pick it up. But actually there are people who are less perceptive, and that's not a criticism. And when you're less perceptive, and you might be being a 3 because actually you're hiding a lot of insecurities, if you actually run the exercise that David did, or we could all point them towards this recording, which will be on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus YouTube channel in a couple of days, it can actually educate our teams probably to work together a little better.
I think it's very easy to underestimate the importance of silence in any group setting. I think silence is so powerful, because when you give silence, you give opportunity for people to contribute. And a lot of people fear vacuum, so they have to fill it. And it's not always considered what they fill it with. So I endorse what you were saying, Kelly. Really useful.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just pausing for effect. No, absolutely. We're in such busy days, aren't we, that you're just rolling from one session per conversation to the next conversation sometimes. So that I'd suggest try that exercise. Rachel has said it's important to invite people to engage in different ways: informal one-to-ones, peer-to-peer communication, written comments via chat, Menti. So lots of different routes to encourage people to engage in conversation. Absolutely, Rachel. I think it's really good points there. And Catherine's mentioned that she's not been in any meeting where there has been a 1-minute pause yet. So yeah, be brave, Catherine, go for it. Give it a try, see what comes up. You might be surprised. Anything else anybody wants to share from the breakout rooms that they had, or any other reflections that they've had on the session? Taking this time to think, I love it.
I think the team dynamic varies, actually, depending on whether you're on a focused team dynamic or just general. Most of us probably work in these open office environments. We just get organic stuff happening. And when you're in zone 1, you're trying to focus. You're trying to do your work. You don't want to be drawn in to zone 2 because it's distracting to you. Yet, if the majority are all going into this sort of collaborative mode, and you'd rather not be in there, you either have to excuse yourself and go elsewhere, or give in and try and participate. But when it's focused and you're coming together for a particular purpose, then yeah, I think there's much more opportunity to harmonise. But we all have the default, and I think we know what our defaults probably are. So having an active step to say, I'm going to move, and become in another zone, I think we don't always think of it actively the way David was describing. I think, we do these things organically. They kind of, our second nature, we learn them through experience, bitter or otherwise. It's what's required for the situation. And if you don't learn it, then perhaps you don't develop as well as you might otherwise do.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point, Ian. Hey, David, we were talking about this before the session, actually, weren't we, when we've been preparing, just in terms of sometimes it's incredibly useful to be in circle 3 or circle 1. Do you have any thoughts there to share about when it's really, really useful to be moving into those circles? Say you're in circle 2 to start with.
So a couple of examples I gave when we were doing the exercise. One is to be in circle 3 when you're at the bar, Like it's really helpful to get the attention of the person behind the bar, particularly when the bar is busy. And you know, like if you're trying to get the attention of a large group, you know, it's circle 3 is really helpful, because you are larger than life, and that can be very useful. I don't think you need to stay there, but I think that there is the invitation to use it a little bit to be larger than life. And then again, circle 1, again, this kind of introspection, like if you're working on a spreadsheet, you know, and it's a really intricate spreadsheet with all kinds of formulas and things like that, there's that, I've got to stay focused, and I don't want to be distracted by the stuff that's going on around me. So it's that ability to be able to zero in on that. So, you know, it all has its value.
Yes. David, thank you for taking us through this exercise. We just wanted to wrap up our contribution to this conversation before passing back to Jill. Just to say if it's been really useful, and if you do want us to come and help, for example, with your own team in terms of helping get into this space, in person or online, we just thought we'd share our details. Do stay in touch with us if this has been really interesting, just as a topic generally, but very welcome to get in touch with us and just showing our details on the screen there. But thanks for engaging with this session. Hopefully it's been a bit of a different lunch session for you today. And hopefully we'll see you all soon. So Jill, just pass back to you.
I just want to say a huge thank you to Kelly and to David, because this has been absolutely fascinating. It's throwing a lot of light on a lot of things for me, which I hoped it would. I wasn't quite sure how you were going to do it. And I think I've learned an awful lot. And I think the more people who understand the value of how to contribute to a team, if we all understood a little more, and if we all spread this far and wide, we might have some even more effective teams than we're in already. So I want to say thank you to everybody for turning up. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for supporting these webinars, and thank you again to David and Kelly, and hopefully we'll see you all on the next webinar.